Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Interplanetary Chase on Kerbal Space Program. First and foremost, I must apologise for missing my upload schedule. I've had a super busy week, we've had decorators in my house, and as such I haven't actually had a chance to record and edit a new episode, hence why, as it stands, I'm currently doing this for following Monday, being Monday the 19th. Now, you join us as we are building a brand new lander in the vehicle assembly building. Now, what we would like to do today is, following the success of our previous breaking ground experiments, we would like to take our breaking ground sites away from Kerbin, maybe to one of Kerbin's moons, being either the moon or Minmus. I believe we're going to aim for Minmus today, with it being a little bit further away, and as such we might be able to achieve a little bit more science. And as you can see, our design is a little bit unconventional, as we are using the Jets fuel tanks with only liquid fuel and no oxidizer. And of course, seeing as this is going to be working in space, you know what that means. We're using the atomic motors. Now, we're going to use 4 of them to provide a relatively okay-ish thrust to weight. We're trying to make these, I suppose you could call them shoulder tanks, but they're really just external tanks, look semi-okay. And kind of flush with the rest of the design here. Fuel lines, landing legs, move the engines up a little bit so the landing legs actually have something to, rest on. I'm going to use, I think, a few of them because we have had some historical issues when it comes to landers being a little bit off-centre. But all in all, no fuss, as we just retract all of these ladders here, make sure none of them are extended. And then it's time for our breaking ground experiments. As you can see, we can use the ionographer today because, of course, if you watched our previous episode, I believe it was Going Polar, you would have known that using those in an atmosphere is something that doesn't work. And of course, Minmus has no atmosphere, so we are able to use it. Now, of course, fairing, I was hoping we could build something like an extended fairing so it doesn't look too derpy going up towards the top. However, as you can see, that hasn't gone particularly well. Regardless, now for our little, well, it's not little, is it? It's the S4 tank. I think that's the S4 tank at least. Transfer stage. So we're going to use an engine cluster, adapter, then fairing to make the adapter look nice and flush with our lifter stage, which of course we are about to build. So here we go. Nice big fuel tank, followed by engine cluster, adapter. Just make sure everything is nice and auto-strutted. Going to use, I believe that's... I can't remember which engine this is. It's either a Rhino or mainsail or maybe something bigger. And of course we have the Vector engines on the outside for additional control authority. SRBs on some decouplers to assist. Followed by some nose cones. Separatrons to pull them away when we decouple them. And once again, just making sure our staging is all looking good. Now, the eagle-eyed of you may have noticed we did put a cargo bay on our lander, however it's completely empty, and admittedly I did forget to put some experiments in there. However, that's not why we're going, nor does it really matter. If anything, it just gives us room for expansion. We have got a new hire today who is flying this mission, as you can see. Colton Kerman is our... I believe he is a engineer, onboard engineer. So he's going on this flight to Minmus, as we've decided, as we thought this will probably be a good maiden voyage for him. Reason being is because we've been to Minmus many times before, and it gives him some moonwalk experience, some spacewalk experience, obviously experience outside of the atmosphere. And of course, he will be responsible for setting up our breaking ground site, which I think, as an engineer, is only fitting. Now, I have done some research. I am fully aware that it should ideally be a scientist who actually does this. However, for the sake of continuity and I think common sense, it does make sense that an engineer kind of sets up the initial sites. I think maybe later in the future we will use some scientists once we've gotten used to how it all kind of deploys. But that's then, and of course this is now. And now we have managed to circularise around Kerbin, and we're just looking to get a Minmus capture. And as you can see, we have managed to do so. And looking at this, it looks like we've done this very, very well. Our transfer stage is actually, our transfer stage. It did assist us with circularising, but I'm not particularly concerned about that. And as you can see, we are a little bit wobbly, but it's nothing that we can't kind of correct. Pushing our apoapsis up, as you can see, and we will get a Mimus encounter about now. As you can see, our closest approaches were coming very close together. Now, I think it's about time we set up a bit of an orbital correction because, of course, well, not necessarily a correction, but to refine our approach to Mimus a little bit because, as you can see, it is a little bit far away. And I think ultimately it would just be a lot easier if we could find ourselves going across the equator, by which point we could just burn retrogrades and find ourselves in the ideal orbit. Now, as you can see, just completing this manoeuvre, as you can see, just seeing how much delta V it would cost us roughly to circularise, being about 200 meters per second worth. But that is absolutely fine. So we approach our retrograde burn, and here we go. We are now circularised around Mimus. If you noticed that skip, which you have done now I've mentioned it, it was because I got a bit of a graphical bug, so I quick saved and just reloaded. As you can see, here we go. So, suicide burn, and we're now falling down towards Mimus' surface. A couple of experiments on the way down. We've lost connection, but that's not too much of a concern, but it is something worth noting for later on. Decouple the transfer stage, and here we go. Time we landed, and we have touchdown. Lovely. So, crew report, EVA report, science experiment, or surface sample even, and it's about time, Colton, that we begin constructing our breaking ground sites. Well, given that we're on Mimus, I think it's more so breaking mint, as will be the name of this site. I was thinking breaking ice, given Mimus is a frozen planet, until I realised that that kind of contradicts the fact that we already have a polar site set up in the North Pole, so no problem. So here we go then. Colton is just setting up our experiments now, around the flag roughly. Of course we have our control station, we have our communications array, seismic scanning experiments, we have the ionographer here, and that will be working, contrary to the last site we set up, thank goodness. And what else have we got? Is that a weather station? No, that is our control station. I thought that was a weather station for a second because it had the little thing that goes up on the top there, but regardless. Solar panels, because of course what good is an experiment site with no power, so here we go. Fortunately we don't need much. However, we did bring, I think it was 6, because there's nothing wrong with a bit of redundancy when it comes to something as vital as solar panels. Here we go then. It's kind of like a bit of a weird comparison, but data centers, for example, somewhere where I visited previously, I think it had, what, 6 or 7 AC units for, what, 3 different servers? I thought that was pretty cool, but anyway, as you can see, everything is set up. We're just having a look at our Kerbin map to see if we can rename this site appropriately, which we have done. And just doing some EVA science experiments. That's worth quite a chunk. As you can see, Colton can jump very high in the Mimus' gravity. So, of course, we need to put everything back and get his jetpack and EVA parachute back out, because, of course, he can't get back into the ship without it. So here we go then. Everything is set up and should be generating some science for us now. So, let's jump off Mimus' surface and try and push ourselves into something resembling an equatorial orbit, shall we? So, our apoapsis is 99 kilometers. I'm not particularly concerned about this being completely circular even, as you can see, because at the end of the day, all we need is a return trajectory to Kerbin. So here we go. Just wiggling our manoeuvre around a little bit because I'm not particularly well versed when it comes to return trajectories. All I know is usually escape the trajectory of the orbit you're on by retrograde burn, and eventually you will end up with a periapsis low enough to return. Speaking of low periapsis, as you can see, periapsis is now 58 kilometers in Kerbin's atmosphere. I did have to time warp a little bit to phase through the fuel tanks, owing to a bit of a design flaw on my part. I have accelerated this footage because we do end up doing quite a few passes through Kerbin's atmosphere before we end up getting a capture. Reason being is because I wasn't convinced that we wouldn't burn up should we have pushed our periapsis any lower down than we previously did. So as you can see, it is slowly coming down from 60 kilometers. Once again, we will eventually end up in the atmosphere because for every single pass we do, we are bleeding off some energy, which as a result is lowering our apoapsis and our periapsis very slightly. Colton looking very happy down there, knowing that eventually he will be coming home. And as you can see, our heat shield is putting in some work, as it's glowing red with every pass we do through Kerbin's atmosphere. Apoapsis 2 million. I think Colton's getting a little bit impatient, so he's going to get out and give it a shove with his jetpack there. Pointing retrograde should lower our periapsis a little bit, and as you can see it has done, which is now 49.5 kilometers. Once again, flight computer just making sure that it keeps us pointing retrograde. We do have some plasma effects now, as we are much lower than previously. Apoapsis is now 90-ish kilometers, so I imagine within the next pass or two we will re-enter the atmosphere. And as you can see, periapsis is now underground, which means we are now in terminal re-entry stages. And we are now in the atmosphere, so pop our parachutes, and eventually we should hopefully splash down with everything intact. And here we go. So recover that vessel, 350 science earned, taking us up to a nice 1056 science points. Wonderful, as we just warp to the next sunrise here. Lovely. Colton is ready for his next assignment, and he's also earned some ribbons. So let's have a look, shall we? He's got the Research 5 ribbon, Splashdown ribbon, Landing on Kerbin ribbon, Mach 2 ribbon, Kerbin EVA ribbon, First Flag on Minmus ribbon, the Low Gravity Landing 10% ribbon, the Minmus EVA ribbon, the Minmus Orbits ribbon, the Kerbin Orbits ribbon, the Dangerous EVA ribbon, and the Heavy Vehicle Launch ribbon. Wonderful. So, with that science, let's have a look to see what we could unlock, shall we? Now, as you can see, I more or less have some idea as to what I want to unlock here. I'm very much thinking experimental electronics with the thermoelectric generators, the RTGs, and the parts that basically passively generate electric charge without the need for solar panels. And I think that would be very useful given some of our previous, let's say, occurrences losing power at a critical time. So we're going to go for that. And that basically cements our probe and drone program to be very, very viable now, as we don't run the risk of suddenly losing connection or power. Speaking of which, it's about time that we upgrade our next-gen satellites with some RTGs. So of course, I'm going to put 2 of these, just to ensure that they remain powered throughout the duration of their flights. Make sure they're auto-shotted in, move them kind of inwards just a little bit, as to make them look nice and flush. And that is absolutely lovely. So we'll save that as ComSat Mark 3B, and ultimately we need to build a deployer for this. Thankfully, that should be relatively simple, because of course ultimately it's the same deployer with the same satellite plus 2 additional parts. So here we go, make sure that's all attached, which it is, and that is absolutely lovely. So, considering we have a new site on Minmus, I think it's a good idea to test this by, of course, sending the satellite to Minmus. Having said that, I'm not sure that this particular launcher, this deployer, has actually made it as far as Minmus. So of course we'll give it a go, see how it goes. This thing's thrust to weight in the atmosphere is amazing. We got to what, almost 1.5 kilometers per second, while it's still experiencing the plasma effects of atmospheric re-entry, even though we weren't re-entering the atmosphere, but still. Regardless, we're getting rid of our fairing now and are starting to extend all of the things our satellite needs, those Gigantor solar panels and of course the antennas. As we coast up towards our apoapsis, it's about time we start to circularise our orbit. Once again, I'm not overly concerned as to how circular it is because we're only going to be launching ourselves away from Kerbin, hopefully towards Minmus, so we'll see how that goes, but as it stands, we are now just past the apoapsis, so time to fire our engine, and we are now in a orbit around Kerbin. A little bit elliptical, 100 by 70, but again it doesn't matter because we're leaving Kerbin at the next earliest point we can. So time to point towards our manoeuvre and time warp towards execution, which ironically just so happens to be more or less where our prograde marker is. But of course I imagine by the time we finish our burn it will be exactly prograde, so I could just point prograde and be a bit more effective, but here we go. And apoapsis is being shot up, and as you can see we now have a nice little Minmus encounter. So let's time warp through our flights here and see where we end up, shall we? Just need to make sure that we do end up in a prograde orbit here, and thankfully it does look like that is the case. As we're just doing some refinements in the bottom left. Although I think, as it stands, this is the best we are going to get it. Now, I'm considering doing an inclination change, although ultimately we'll see what happens, because of course it's all well and good having these plans, but we actually need to circularise first. So get rid of that tank, we're about done with it. And we're going to finish this, of course, with our ion engine, along with our xenon gas. And as you can see, the electric charge is not budging. The RTGs, our new parts, are absolutely working at their peak here. I mean, the electric charge input from the solar panels combined with the passive output from the RTGs should mean that we don't actually lose any, assuming we're using our engine in full sun exposure. Now, just going towards our apoapsis here to see if we can fine-tune our orbit a little bit, which should be relatively simple with an engine as weak as the ion engine, but still. Here we go. 250 by 250. I am considering a inclination change if I decide probably best not to, because given our orbital altitudes we're actually going to be in visual kind of uninterrupted line of sight of Kerbin regardless of which side of Minmus we're on, so I think we'll keep this orbit, and of course we are able to talk to the site down below as and when we pass it, which is lovely. So all in all I would consider this a successful mission, as we get a nice little screenshot of our, not new satellite, but upgraded satellite. As you can see, the RTGs in the gaps underneath our solar panels here. So wonderful. So let's crack on, shall we? I think we need to do a little bit of cleaning up, because of course some of our Mark 1 comsats are still in use, but I think they're a little bit redundant and not strictly necessary, so if anything they might just be lagging the game a little bit. So let's terminate these flights. They've done their jobs very nicely, and it's time to retire those satellites. So down they come. Comsat Mark 2, possibly. It is in a polar orbit, but I don't think we need that with, of course, the Mark 3 that we have in orbit now. Mark 2A around the moon, we'll keep that because that's the only one we have around the moon, so that one will be in some further use. As you can see, we have one of the Mark 3As around Joule, we have a couple of them around Leif, and of course we now have a brand new one around Minmus, obviously the Mark 3B, the upgraded version, so that's nice. Now something else I wanted to do was, obviously we intend on bringing the Kerbal Orbital Lab somewhere else. We're going to bring it somewhere new. I haven't decided where yet, but of course it's a little bit low on fuel. So I think we should probably test our brand new IRSU ore converters. As what we may be able to do is we may be able to equip the lab with some landers, with some drills and ore tanks, which will be able to obviously mine some more, bring it up to the lander, oh, not lander, sorry, the station, and of course convert it into usable resource, being liquid fuel, oxidizer, monopropellant, anything like that. So of course RTGs, we have plenty of monoprop. This will be an unmanned flight, just FYI. Of course some communitrons, just to ensure that we retain connection, because of course as it stands I don't think we have anything overly strong on the station. I don't think we should have to, given our the state of our comms network in the solar system, but of course it's always good to have a little bit of just in case, right? So I think ultimately we will put a heat shield on the bottom here because we have a docking port on the top. And that's wonderful. Couple of solar panels, just for single radial attachment ones. As we save this as the Kerbal Orbital Lab Convertitron. Okay, decoupler, and I think it's time we put a fairing on here. Nice and tall, nice and pointy, nice and aerodynamic. And that is, of course, so far so good. Clamshell deploy, and then nice big fuel tank, followed by engine. Trying to find one that works because, of course, this fuel tank is a bit of an unconventional size. I think we will ultimately use the Bobcat here. We are going to put this in a boat tail design, which means that we won't get a nice little fairing around it when we put a decoupler there by default, so we may actually have to build our own through our smaller decoupler, big fairing underneath it kind of design. As you can see, if we can close our fairing, which we have done, that looks and should ultimately work rather quite nicely as we just figure out our staging once again. Now, of course, I think we're going to put a fuel tank adapter, followed by a nice big S4, that's not an S4 tank, that's one of the Rockomax Jumbo 64 tanks, or Orange Tank as they were known back in kind of a prime KSP days. Make sure everything's nice and auto-strutted. Decouplers, SRBs, once again just to assist with our ascent, you know the drill. Make sure the nozzles are roughly the same height. Figure out our staging, time for some Separatrons. Low fuel, because they don't need to burn the entire time. Attach some winglets and stabilisers. Just bring this thing down a little bit. Wonderful. And of course we almost forgot a passive antenna, so that would have been no good. We would have lost connection basically the moment we left sight of the space centre. So here we go then. Let's obviously time warp so the orbital lab is within intercept range. Quick save, and up we go. I gotta say, I think this is actually one of my nicer looking rockets. It's not overly big, it doesn't look like it's been over engineered by any stretch. And here we go. Gravity turn, get rid of the SRBs, and successful separation. As we do start getting some more plasma effects, but by this rate we're in the outer reaches of the atmosphere anyway, so it doesn't particularly matter. As you can see, we do already have a relatively close intercept, but I believe we can make that a little bit better. So first and foremost, let's pop our antennas here to make sure we do keep a nice connection. This wouldn't matter if it was a manned mission, but once again, this is unmanned using a drone core. As we begin circularizing, I know we're not quite at our apoapsis, but of course we need to raise it anyway, so by doing it a little bit earlier on, there's no harm done as we separate our lifter stage. We're now down to our Bobcat orbital stage. Apoapsis has been reached, so let's just bring our periapsis and equalise it. So we've now matched orbits with the lab, although it is behind us a little bit. As such, we need to raise our apoapsis in order to slow down our orbits at that particular point and allow the lab to catch up to us. It's a relatively simple burn though, so here we go. And of course, as you can see, we now have two very close encounters, so we're going to time warp over to the next closest one. Well, not next closest, but the closest one. And as you can see, we are 700 meters away and slowly drifting away. So, of course, we're going to kill our relative velocity, being about 30 meters per second. Point towards our target, and ever so slowly burn towards it. While we do so, of course, I think it's in our best interests to point the station retrograde, because of course we are coming up from its prograde nodes, and the docking nodes we need is actually towards its back. So Here we go, just coasting up towards it. We do have a bit of a problem in that I wasn't expecting to use the not transfer stage, but the Bobcat stage there this early, which means where it's still attached, we have quite a lot of adverse rotation when using our translation for our RCS thrusters here. Although we are managing to make it work. Ultimately, I decided to keep it with us because, well, of course, we could just transfer some fuel out of it. The station does need some more fuel anyway, and if the station also has any oxidizer, we can just transfer that to the vessel there, because of course we don't need oxidizer. It's powered by atomic motors. We only need liquid fuel as a resource. Now, a couple of errors in design here. It's my own fault. Firstly, we can only deploy 2 of the radiators because, well, otherwise they just go into the side boosters, which is the last thing we need. Secondly, it doesn't affect anything functionally, but the antennas are facing the wrong way. We want those, ideally, to be pointing into clean air. Well, not clean air, but kind of behind us where there's no obstruction. So let's get rid of our fuel first. Pump up the station with whatever we need. We have no stray oxidizer from the station anywhere, so we can just keep that as is. We can also process some data in the lab, which we haven't already done. So we'll pop that in there, start research, and that is absolutely wonderful. As you can see, we are out of ore. Oh, well, we're about to be out of ore with us starting and the conversion. We can get rid of that tank. We don't need that now. And of course, that is us more or less done. So let's just get Bill, our engineer, out to strut up the rear part of this brand new Convertitron, and of course try to make this as uniform as possible on both sides. Not done a very good job though, because he's kind of coasting away. So let's reposition you, Bill. Now I do need to say we are coming up to the end of today's episode, so I'd just like to say thank you guys very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Kerbal Space Program content, and I will see you guys in the next one.